Joining us now, very pleased to welcome to the show. And if you followed any of the news stories that have been written, apparently Secretary of State candidate Kim Crockett is the most dangerous woman alive. Good morning, Kim. How are you?
Yeah. Isn't it interesting? This is such a strange time, John. And how are you, by the way?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing good. I feel like over the course of and I'll just talk about me for a moment because I like to. I feel like
it's all about you, John. It's all about you.
I feel like for the past week or so, I've turned a corner. Next week on Tuesday it'll be 2 months, and that's about the time when you start to feel normal. And it was funny on the drive in this morning. There was a moment where I went, I'm not really feeling much of anything, so that's good. There was an AP article, Kim. I didn't get a chance to get to it. I was holding on to it all week. There was an AP article that was written earlier. Actually, it might have even been written last week, pre-primary. But the story was Wisconsin and Minnesota GOP candidates trying to take over elections. And it was speaking about you, and it was speaking about the Wisconsin Secretary of State GOP candidate as well. And just the bias garbage in this piece about how awful, just the implication in it was awful, horrible, and evil that these two individuals were running for Secretary of State, and they actually wanted to do this thing called bring, integrity to our elections, and how you wanted to take them over. It was really, really astonishing to read.
I agree. And it kind of fits in. By the way, it's always nice when O'Brien's on your show, but because he's so calm and his analysis is always so tight, we need to bring the same sort of calmness to what's going on here in the Secretary of State space, not just in Minnesota, but around the country, where someone such as myself would dare step up, raise their hand, and say, no, I don't think Minnesota has the perfect election system.
Yeah.
And they turn that into something dangerous and dark, and they've almost become like a cartoon. And you can predict what they're going to say before they open their mouth. And they all use the same phrases, John, which is the hallmark of propagandists. They've become just cartoonish, buffoon propagandists. And I was really sad to see in the Star Tribune this week that they gave space to, kind of an old left-wing buddy of mine, Dane Smith, who accused me and Scott Jensen and various legislators who were running, on the ideas of like photo ID when we vote and tightening up the absentee balloting system. They said we were going to vandalize Minnesota's election system. That was perfect, by the way. It's a perfect system. It's the best in the country. And, if the people of Minnesota don't think that, and I think they've expressed real reservations for a number of election cycles on both sides of the aisle, then we beg to differ.
Yeah.
And they're actually referring to responsible legislation offered last session by people like Senator Kiffmeyer and folks in the House as vandalism. It's reached a fever pitch, and frankly, it's irresponsible. And I appreciate the opportunity to call it out. They also accuse our side of somehow fomenting, civil unrest or violence or something. That sounds like classic Democrat projection again. They tend to tell us what they're doing, and so they project it onto us. And this is not responsible. We can make light of it, but I don't think we should, John. I think this is very serious.
It is. It really is. And to that point, the garbage that is put out there. Before having you on this morning, and I do this with a lot of guests, I'll do a quick Google search just to find out what the latest articles are. One popped up from AOL. I don't know which subsidiary it was coming from, right? The headline alone, headline and one quick paragraph in this. Election denier, Kim Crockett, wins Minnesota GOP Secretary of State primary. Now, before I get to this paragraph, the headline alone, the election denier. I mean, the level of bias and implication there, completely lacking of any sort of context of what it is supposed to invoke to the reader. I mean, it is, I will mock it appropriately on the air, but it is really, truly frightening where our media has gone and what they deem as credible journalism when they will go and print a headline like that alone, because you don't even get into it in the opening statement. It just talks about you winning Minnesota's Republican Secretary of State primary on Tuesday night, making you, they do say this, making her the latest GOP candidate who lied about the 2020 election to win the party's nomination. That's the kind of credible reporting that we get now, Kim Crockett.
Right, and I can tell you that whatever outfit that was never spoke to me. They don't know who I am. They probably haven't visited my website. They probably ignored my press release, which pointed to a couple of things. For example, that the current Secretary of State was called out by the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals in 2020 for violating not only Minnesota's Constitution, but the U.S. Constitution for changing election laws in Ramsey County Court with his buddy Mark Elias from the Democracy Docket. He got called out, and they spanked him, and they spanked him hard. And I quoted the court in my press release saying, I will never do that as your Secretary of State because I actually respect the rule of law in our state legislature. Why? Because the people of Minnesota select those legislators to make our election laws, and I will follow them as Secretary of State. I also pointed out that I would ban suckerbucks in Minnesota. I would not allow them to infiltrate our local and state election processes and get out the vote. What if I use money from, the NRA or, name your favorite red group to get out the vote for Republicans? Well, I would never do that.
Right.
It should be a nonpartisan office. So what they have here is a candidate from Minnesota who's been devoted to the rule of law her entire career. I'm even-handed. I'm fair. I have the credentials to do the job, and they're doing everything they can to stop me from getting in front of the voters that I need to get us over the top in Minnesota. And we just can't let them win, John, which is why I appreciate your show so much. I appreciate Alpha News. And frankly, old-fashioned newspapers like the Duluth Tribune, which very nicely published an op-ed on why I'm running, with no commentary, no attacks. You can go find it last weekend when I actually was up north that day too. But I must admit, when I get requests from the media, like I did this week for editorial boards or interviews, that I approach those with caution. Because if they're coming in with a preconceived notion on, who I am and who I represent, which is a huge group of voters here in Minnesota, it's frustrating. Because if they've already made up their minds, why would I talk to them? I've got voters to talk to.
Yeah.
Right? Speaking of which, I'm going to head to the Dakota County Fair this morning, and then I'll be down at the Goodhue County Fair in Broda. Yeah, going out and kissing babies, if they'll let me, because I love babies, and just, talking about election integrity. And I'll tell you, when I'm out meeting regular people, John, they are ready to vote for a change here in Minnesota.
Well, and election integrity is always has always been a fascinating one to me, just because I would think that regardless of which side of the political spectrum you fall on, regardless of what team you side for, that you would want our elections to be as secure as possible. You wouldn't want somebody to have the ability to go and cast a ballot in your name. You wouldn't want anybody else who's going to vote to be able to cast multiple votes for a candidate. And of course, the way that politics are right now, it has become more like fandoms in a team sport where, anything for my side to win. I trust that there is enough people out there that also want to see that integrity as well. Again, regardless of the political spectrum, and not just what we see so much on the surface level of social media and the commentary. If you are elected, what's one of the first things as it relates to election integrity that you would do, Kim Crockett? But also, apart from that, in your role as Secretary of State, what are you what else are you looking forward to tackling in that position?
Well, there's a lot of legislation that both Democrats and Republicans sat down and considered this last year. Things like dealing with drop boxes and Zuckerbucks and voter ID. There's a whole host of issues that our state legislators talked to each other about at length and got close to passing. For example, a ban on Zuckerbucks. The Democrats and Republicans came to agreement on that before Simon and Walz intervened and tanked it. They also agreed to not allow counties to require election judges sitting on ballot boards to be vaccinated. And then Simon and Walz tanked it right in those last days of the session. So what I would do is pick up the ball on those items that are kind of ready to go and get through committee and get those on Dr. Scott Jensen's or Governor Jensen's desk, just for starters, because there is a legislative process. The Secretary of State is not a lawmaker. The Secretary is someone who has the bully pulpit to persuade the legislature and say, here are best practices. Here's what, the information I could bring to you. But ultimately, it's our elected representatives who pass the election laws that we live with. So we'd look at a package of those types of reforms that are frankly ready to go, and a lot of the legislators were happy to vote for them this year. That would be the first order of business, and we'd be looking ahead to get ready for 2024.
Yeah.
One of the things I'd want to get rid of are ballots. These ballot boxes. I just was up at Two Harbors, and they've caught one there, and there isn't any way for the election officer to know that who put that ballot in the box is the vote on that ballot. There just isn't any way to know that. And so we tighten up, problems like that in the system so that everybody can have more confidence in the outcome. And that's my singular goal, is to increase everyone's confidence in the outcome, because we shouldn't be fighting about who won when there's so many other good things to fight about, John.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, Minnesota's politically divided. We're not going to become a solid red state overnight when we win this. There are always going to be disagreements, I think, just based on who we are here. But who won the election shouldn't be one of the things we fight about. I did have a primary opponent, and his big issue, he's kind of a single issue guy, is the machines that we vote with, both the e-poll books and the tabulators. And there's a huge national discussion going on about the quality, the reliability of the equipment. So that would be another thing. I have good connections to national resources where we'd be taking a look at those to make sure that Minnesota can feel confident that our votes are being counted accurately. And one of the ways we can test that is through a more rigorous auditing system. And one of the things I've always said, John, is you don't let government audit itself.
Mm.
You just don't.
Yeah.
You'd have to bring in outside auditors, and the precincts or the counties that would be audited. It would be random. They wouldn't know in advance who was going to be audited. And that way everybody would be going, well, we're going to do a really good job. We're going to really tighten things up and do our best.
Kim Crockett, I'm short on time. Where can people? Thank you so much for calling in this morning. Though, where can people find out more information about you?
Come to kimsos.com and sign up for emails. We have an active Facebook community. For better or for worse, we're on Facebook, but that's where people are. And we'd love to have you join us. We're also on Getter and lots of other platforms. So come join the conversation. Let's win this thing and calm things down in Minnesota and win this fall. And I always appreciate your help in reaching your audience.
It's always great talking with you. Congratulations, and we'll certainly have you back on again real soon, Kim Crockett.
Glad you're feeling well.
Thank you so much.